On this week's show, we look under the dome, the General Motors Design Dome, and hear about the history of GM design from its start back in the 1900s to today's 21st century designs. Coming up next on Autoline This Week. Underwriting for Autoline This Week has been provided by
a successful family-owned company listed on the stock exchange and with a rich history spanning over 100 years. Hella is a global leader in developing and manufacturing lighting and electronic products for the automotive industry. With over 30,000 employees, Hella offers unique and innovative lighting solutions for all types of vehicles throughout the world. At Hella, we embrace the challenges of current technological limits and develop extraordinary ideas for the future. Innovative strength, technical competence, and dedicated employees. Visit Hella.com today for more information and career opportunities.
And now, here's your host, John McElroy.
I want to thank you all for joining us on Autoline this week, and welcome to the historic Design Dome of General Motors at its Tech Center in Warren, Michigan. The reason we're here is we've got three terrific designers to talk all about the design of General Motors, the history of what's been going on here. Joining me today, Ed Welburn, the Vice President of Global Design at GM. Also joining us today, Helen Emsley, the Executive Director of GMC and User Experience, and John Cafaro, the Executive Director of Global Chevrolet. And I've got to tell you, it is terrific to have the three of you here in the Design Dome with some of the most incredible collection of cars behind us. Ed, you chose these cars. Why'd you choose them?
Well, it's funny, if you were to ask me tomorrow which cars I'd pick, it'd probably be a somewhat different group. It's just, I've got a lot to pick from, which is kind of fun. Really good.
And Helen, you haven't been here as long as some of these cars, but you've got to appreciate the history of what they represent.
Yeah, I do. It's great to see them because I mean, you see them in pictures, and when you're a child, and you see the pictures, and now when you actually see them for real life. But I don't get to drive them like Ed sometimes does. That's one thing he gets over me. But I mean,
I think you just got to pitch Ed to let her drive one of these cars.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Thank you.
And John, you do have deep roots in this too, and it's got to be cool to see these cars
out
here.
Well, I think it's great being here in the Dome with these cars because they are really
history.
Part of GM's design history, but part of ourselves personally. And of course, the Corvettes you see here on my right were the cars that inspired us to get into this business.
Yeah.
And I know the Cyclone for Ed as well.
And I want to get into all those, but let's start back from the very beginning, because General Motors is generally credited really with being the first car company in the world to have its own design studios.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't Harley Earl's idea, it was Sloan's idea to do it.
Sloan, of course, being the chairman of the company.
He, along with the Fisher brothers, they had this idea of having their an internal design group, and they thought that Harley Earl would be the right person to do it. And he totally changed the way we design vehicles.
In what way?
Well, prior to him being at General Motors, the bodies were designed in wood, up on horses, up high, higher than car position. The fenders and the hoods were done at a different location. And then it was just kind of stuck together. And you look at those cars, they didn't have that transition. It was all done in wood. Harley Earl brought clay, and he said cars should be designed at the height you view them normally. So they were brought down to ride position and done in clay as one overall shape.
John, what's the advantage of doing it in clay over wood?
Well, I think clay is a good old familiar medium to all of us. I mean, it's easy to manipulate. I think our sculptors, which are very, very important to the design of our vehicles, they work in clay. They're trained in clay as whether potters or ceramic artists. So it's just a natural medium. And people talked about not too long ago. I still have people ask me, "Do you still use clay?" I says, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
Now, Helen, I've heard some companies talking, Jaguar, Land Rover especially, they want to get away from clay completely in the next 4 to 5 years. Do you think that's ever going to happen?
We had the idea once and then we went away from it, remember?
Yeah,
we really did. You need to see it in size, proportion. The interiors, you need to be able to sit in them. So I can't imagine that we would ever. You use the digital side, of course, to do other things and with the releases, but you've got to. And also, you've got to make mistakes. You know, you've got to try things out, and luckily with clay, if it was wood, you'd have to take a long time to repair it or be ready for a presentation. With clay, if we're doing something, if Ed comes in and doesn't like it, luckily we can change it within a day, okay?
It's called getting out the big rake.
Exactly. Those guys are so talented. They save our life daily, okay?
And you know, the use of the computer and developing the design in the tube, as we call it, is become a lot more prevalent. We use it a lot.
Yeah.
But the final design, being able to walk around the vehicle to capture the emotion, that whole passion that's in the design.
And I've got to believe too, actually touching it, physically touching it, running your hand down it has got to help you in perceiving what you're doing.
And even if we could do it on the computer, it's a lot easier communicating with the leaders of the company.
Show them it.
When you have a three-dimensional object that you can walk around with them.
Yeah, with the portfolios of our business expanding in different configurations in vehicles, it's important to have these side-by-side reviews outside because size, proportion, height, mass, volume, wheel size, you can't do that in a conference room. It has to be outside.
Yeah, and sometimes some of the surfaces on the computer they'll look good. So then we mill them onto the machine, onto the model, and then Ed will come by, and you see the detail, the fine detail you would not see on the screen.
Yeah.
You really, many a time you'll walk by and you'll make a comment and we'll see it and you know we've got to put it right.
In general, it's people outside of design that want to get rid of clay. The design teams want to stay with it. Yeah.
Nonetheless, the digital world and virtual reality has got to be
huge. Yeah.
And that's got to be one of the big changes all three of you have seen in your careers.
Yeah. It really allows us to communicate with all those studios around the world, share information with engineers as well.
And save information. I mean, you think about it, when we're looking for old sketches that were done years ago and they've gone missing or you've thrown them out. This time, the designers can all save them on sites that we can get, and Ed can then see them from different designers and around the world, so we can actually keep the history where now we're scrambling trying to find old sketches.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Designers can still maintain their unique sketch signature, their style. Even in the digital form, you can recognize each designer's
you really can.
Style without their signature. There's no individuality lost in it.
And do you know another thing that some of the designers do? They'll sketch on the tablet, and then they can save it. Another designer can go into that, bring it up on their screen, and they can add to it. That really is helpful. So, if you had two designs, you can put them together. They can work on the same sketch.
Ed, as you say, General Motors has 10 different design studios in 7 different countries. So the digital world has got to help in collaboration between them. But I also got to believe that for engineering and manufacturing, they can take those digital designs and work on them more easily.
Absolutely. It allows, for example, die engineering. The earlier they can get information, the easier it is for them to create a shape, be able to, to manufacture it. If they don't get that information until later in the process, then they've got to keep the shape fairly simple.
Let's go back in history a little bit, John. General Motors is probably credited not just with creating the first design staff of any major car company, but also the first concept car, right? Isn't the Buick Y Job generally accredited with being the first of the concept cars?
That is correct.
Talk a little bit about that and how concept cars, dream cars have evolved over the years.
Well, concept cars are obviously very, very important to us. I think when design organizations kind of lost their way in tough times in the economy, they cut out concept cars. I think that's where we got kind of lost as an industry, let's say, losing the ability to look out on the horizon and have a vision for future transportation products. So show cars for me, personally, I think for any designer is how you get hooked in this business. I mean, going all the way back. Certainly for me, the Mako Shark and the Manta Ray were you see those cars and you start writing letters to General Motors Design, figuring out what to do.
Did you do that too, Helen?
No.
Was it concept cars? How'd you get into the business? Uh-oh.
How did you get into this business?
I often ask myself. Actually, I did textile design originally, and then I went to the Royal College of Art to do transport design, sort of on a bet. That's why we all laugh. And I ended up getting, don't laugh, it's true.
Much more fun than the textile.
I know, but okay. So I ended up doing transport design, and then Wayne Cherry, and I'm thinking I'll go back into the textile industry, but I did interiors and fabrics for cars. And then Wayne Cherry offered me a job, and then Ed put me in the studio. So it's been quite a story. See, does that answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Ed, it was
What a great
concept
story.
cars that got you into the business,
It was.
right?
It was that concept car right there.
You've got the Cadillac Cyclone.
Yeah.
What is it about this car that really tugged at your heartstrings
If you can
enough to say, I
imagine,
want to do that?
It's the late 50s, and that car was just like a dream car, and the way it was displayed as well, it was bigger than life, and it was an emotional connection that I had with that car that did it.
Okay, these days we don't see the industry do dream cars. They do concept cars that are very production oriented. And we've got two Buick examples here we'll get to in a moment. Should the industry be back doing dream cars?
Every now and then we'll do that. We dream in a different way, but I think on the most part, we are on such a product offensive, doing one vehicle after another, that the concepts, I think, have to be a bit closer
I think
to what we're doing.
There's a bandwidth in concept. You look at concept like the FNR that was done in our studio in China. To me, that's a dream car. That's way out there. And then we have vehicles, of course, the Chevrolet Bolt, which went from concept to production in record time, and that was one that was maybe close. We knew we could get there from the concept. So there's a bandwidth to them.
Okay, and we see these two Buicks that I talked about, the Avenir and the Avista. Ed, why do these? I mean, they look production. They almost look like they could be in a showroom today. So tell us a little bit about
the thing that's so fascinating about them is that they were developed to really put a stake in the ground regarding the design language for the brand, evolving the face of the vehicle, the form vocabulary, and those two cars are having an incredible influence on everything we're doing for the Buick brand. We'd love for these cars to go into production, but even if they don't, the influence they're having is just spectacular, both exterior and interior.
Now, if I got this right, these were done in Australia. Do I have that right?
The Avenir was done in Australia.
What is it about?
Vista was done here.
Okay, but what is it about design today? If you go back when I started covering this business, an American car, you could tell it was an American car, a German one, a Japanese one. Today we've got, I'm not going to call it, homogeneous design, but there's no longer that distinct nationality to it, to the point that you can have an Australian design studio do a killer-looking Buick.
Well, I think it's the shrinking of the world. Its designers are trained all over the world. They interact. It shows. It's really a global design community, and I think the influence of the different regions for us is very, very important. We still see difference in vehicles from region to region. Whether it's trim or form language or SUV nature versus crossover nature. But it is a small community. Think about automotive design. It's like sports teams. There's only so many people that can participate or make the cut and get into the business, and that's what makes it so exciting.
And I think the people around the world they want something from somewhere else. I think as kids are growing up now with all the communications and the smartphones, and they're all on the web and everything else, they see things. I know when you go to China, Ed, these people in China are always asking, I want that. I see it on the TV, I see it on the movies. So they want something from America, they want something from Europe. So I think the world's getting a smaller place in anything that you do because of the fact that everybody travels so much more now, and everybody has everything at their fingertips. They can read about it.
I think they're absolutely right, both of them, about how the world is smaller and everyone sees everything else. They're not on islands really. But there is another important ingredient, and that's with each brand. A brand has to have a strong identity. And we've mapped out a strategy for each brand, all about the essence of what a Buick is all about, what a Chevrolet is all about. Chevrolet's got a totally different look and feel than Buick. Cadillac, again, something different as well.
Yeah.
The two Cadillacs are on stage. You can tell they have a very different feel than the Buicks that are down here on the floor.
Has that been a challenge for the three of you, you know, in the sense that automakers today need economy of scale, i.e. they have to use as many common components and architectures as possible, which means your job is doubly hard, right? To take a similar set of, you know, the guts of a car and make it look individual to each brand.
And John may have the greatest challenge because he's got the widest portfolio of Chevrolet globally.
Yeah, I think the challenge of, we've talked about this for years, you know, rules and regulations, aerodynamics, you know, is it going to make vehicles the same? It really hasn't. You know, automotive designers in this business are incredibly creative. They can get around rules. You know, we're enabled by large creative engineering staffs that enable us to differentiate or push the envelope in different directions. Each brand, each make has their own way of solving a rule or regulation. It's like racing. You know, Formula One cars are very different, but the rules are within, you know, hundreds of millimeters, but they look, you know, I can spot a Ferrari versus a Red Bull versus a Mercedes, because, and that's kind of the way we approach it. So never count out the creativity and the creativity of our engineering manufacturing organizations.
But that's been learned, right? Because if you go back to the early 90s, there's a very famous, you guys know what I'm going to say, the famous Fortune magazine cover where they had 4 GM brand cars and you could not tell one from the other.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
and there was some truth to that, but this gives me a real opportunity.
I want to hear it.
If you took those 4 cars and had them in front view, they look totally different from each other.
Yeah,
if you took 4 very different cars today, I've done it because we were going to stage our own Fortune 500 cover, took 4 very different designs and stacked them up side by side, the same way they did, they look the same. They look very much the same.
So you're saying they kind of cheated the shot.
Yes, they did.
They wanted the
yes,
results.
they did, big time. They got what they wanted out of it. I mean, their point, there were a lot of cars that looked alike back then, and those cars are similar, but they did really push the envelope. Yeah.
But what we found though, like on the interiors, we would design different parts, but they would look very similar. And to the regular customer, like, well, remember we had this with some door handles, I held them up and said, Ed, what do you think? They were 2 totally different. We'd engineered them, tooled them, paid for them, different suppliers, everything. And if you held them 6 feet away, you'd think they're the same thing. So we're like, okay, one's gone. Let's use that money and use it where the customer sees it. So we've done a lot of that, where we've taken things, I mean, exterior colours years ago, I remember when I first came here, we had the same colour, but if you asked a different brand, they would say it was not the same colour because they thought they were getting a different red. They were the same from the same tin.
How many blacks did we have? How many silvers?
We had 13 whites, I remember that when I first got here, 13. And silvers, I think we were like up to about 20. But we had these 2 reds, I'll never forget. And one is, we still have it actually, Victory Red, but Buick used it, let me think, Pontiac used it and Chevrolet used it. Chevrolet called it Victory Red and Pontiac called it Bright Red. They were the same colour, but they thought they weren't, and we were paying different prices and it was ridiculous, so we just eliminated one. So then we could develop another colour that would be different and people would see it. So I think we've become wiser.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think we've become wiser globally as well, because suppliers would take things to here, they would take things to Opel, they would take things to Australia, the same things, and we didn't talk to each other, so we didn't know. This way we share. So we're only paying for things to be engineered and designed once.
Okay, Ed, I've got to ask you, we've got the Corvette Mako Shark. We've been talking about painting cars. There is a fantastic story behind the history of that guy. You want to tell that?
Okay, I think many of us have heard the story about when they're developing it, and you really look at the surfaces of it, it's very much like a shark. Even the profile of the fenders and the gills and all of that. And Bill Mitchell had been deep sea fishing and captured this fish and had it mounted and brought it back, and he wanted the car painted just like it. Gradation of tone from almost white or bluish white on up to nearly black at the top, just like the fish. And they had painted it and painted it and painted it over and over, and they could never capture it. He was always upset, and he didn't want to upset Bill Mitchell. So one night, after he had gone home, they took that fish that had been mounted and they sprayed it to match the car. And he was satisfied.
Because he would bring the fish down, you said, and match it to the car.
But I got to tell you, that car's got a lot of paint on it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great stories.
Was that true?
That's accurate. Yeah, it was Ed Ketter was the painter, I remember.
I'm sure this design building is full of great stories. I have no doubt about it. Do you guys miss one part of what GM did in its past, though? Because back in the day, General Motors did buses and trains and motor homes and a whole variety of things.
We did kitchens.
Kitchens, that's right. Refrigerators with Frigidaire.
Yeah.
But, you know, in some ways, you know, it shrunk down to purely automotive design, cars and trucks. But it's growing again with the work that we're doing, exhibits. All the exhibits for the auto shows. We're very much involved with the design of the dealerships. We worked with Disney. Disney doesn't work with outside design teams. We worked with them on an exhibit at Epcot. It was so successful that we worked with them on the new Disneyland in Shanghai. And I remember walking those grounds and there was nothing but mud and they were just starting. We were there just a few days ago and it hasn't opened to the public yet, but we rode one of the great rides there. And it was a project that we worked with Disney on. So yes, we do more than cars and trucks.
We just expanded to different things, you know.
You mentioned auto shows. You know, that's a pet peeve of mine these days. I think that they're not doing a good enough job at really getting the public excited, especially the media. You know, when you see some of these other tech shows like CES and the like, really starting to capture what some of the future technology in automotive is going to be. Any thoughts along those lines?
Well, I think you've initiated the conversation within design on how we're going to approach auto shows in the future. I think we've engaged our senior leadership, our senior marketing leadership on certainly new ways of communicating with the customers and making a big splash, but certainly the internet and the web tools and everything are changing how we connect with future customers. That granted, you know, being older, I still like the glitz and glamour of the auto show. There's still something special about it. It's a little bit of a throwback, but it's exciting and it's a tradition. But it's going to change, Ed. I think you want to.
Yeah, I think it will, and I think, you know, some customers don't go to auto shows, and is it because that's not their thing, or is it because we haven't created the right environment for them? So I think there's a real opportunity to really explore some exciting, different ways of managing an auto show.
Good. I like what I'm hearing here.
No,
but the show, I mean, Helen, the shows themselves, though, still people pack in. You got great product, and it's neat going down to the auto shows.
I take my son every year.
As a designer, and you kind of get in the back seat of a car or a truck that you've worked on. You want to get some tough feedback or good feedback. And they don't know who they're sitting next to.
Or to just stand back and watch the crowds and see where the crowds move.
Where the crowd goes. So.
I love the media days myself. But I like the public days even more.
That's where the
because these are the people who are going to end up buying or not buying. And Helen, so let me throw this out to you. There's a lot of talk these days that a younger generation is just not that interested in cars. And we're seeing this globally. But here in the United States, we have the lowest percentage of 18-year-olds with their driver's license. Is that a challenge for you folks in design?
Yes, it really is. Because I myself have a 13-year-old son, and he keeps telling me that he's not going to drive. He's going to move to a town where he can get public transport because he thinks he'll be too distracted with his cell phone. So I'm living that dream. So I know that we've got to put technology into the cars. If we put technology into these vehicles, they're more interested. We were talking about this a while ago, how when we were younger, you talk about the engine, you talk about different things. These kids talk about the technology that's in that vehicle, how they can adapt that car to what they want. They want to find a way that that's their vehicle. What's on the screen is their apps. So that's where we've got to look more and more into, and we've got to get their advice as well. When we go out to a lot of, we take a lot of our new vehicles to clinics. and we show them, and we're trying more and more to bring in the next generation, the younger customers, to see these vehicles, because the people we sell to now, they'll buy again or they'll buy one of our competitor, but they know what they want and they know what they're used to. It's the next generation we've got to make sure that we're working ahead for what they need, so it's really important.
John, I got to believe things like the work that General Motors has done with the Transformers movies, or even designing vehicles that go in video games, is one way of getting kids interested in cars.
I mean, there's still a lot of people, young people, interested in vehicles, and you go to racing and stuff like that. There's still, but you know, that's the beauty of a large company like General Motors. We can appeal to all the different segments, all the different age groups, but I really believe it's important, as Helen mentioned, to really grow this future customer base. I think there's truth in that, where you start out as you enter into the company or the brand, and then you walk them through the different brands as you mature, you have a family, and you grow older. I remember a Corvette engineer told me, you make your decision to buy your Corvette when you're 15, but you never get it till you're like 55. But you know, that's kind of the way it works. And you know, I've heard these scenarios over my close to 40 years at GM, and still the passion for cars and trucks and driving and experiencing the horsepower and acceleration and swinging the rear out and burning. It's still there. The excitement is still there. But there's going to be this technology part and this future. This autonomous and Uber type driving. That's why we're a big company, and that's why General Motors is such a cool place to work. And I think just to see the transformation of the company from where it was when we were kids and we were excited where we are now, it's so exciting to be a part of it still.
It's amazing, really, when you think about it. We're on the verge of massive change in this industry. I think we'd all agree on that. And yet, here you all represent a continuity that goes back to the late 1920s, when Harley Earl was hired as the first designer at General Motors, the first in the world for any car company. So it's a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to sit down with the three of you, and I really got to thank you, Ed Welburn, Helen, John. Thanks so much for your time today. Very interesting look over design.
It's great to be here.
You're welcome.
Very cool.
Underwriting for Autoline this week has been provided by
A successful family-owned company listed on the stock exchange and with a rich history spanning over 100 years. Hella is a global leader in developing and manufacturing lighting and electronic products for the automotive industry. With over 30,000 employees, Hella offers unique and innovative lighting solutions for all types of vehicles throughout the world. At Hella, we embrace the challenges of current technological limits and develop extraordinary ideas for the future. Innovative strength, technical competence, and dedicated employees. Visit Hella.com today for more information and career opportunities.